every generation, scholars would have to decide how would they want to divide the world and for what purpose would such a classification serve. When, however, we see the way scholars assessed the realities that surrounded them, it helps us in understanding why some of them interpreted the relationships they had with non-Muslims as one of hostility, particularly for those who viewed the world as just divided into two, the aggressors and those who were being victims of aggression. And so for some scholars, the normative relationship they could possibly see with the non-Muslim world was one of aggression, one of hostility, because you are always under threat of others trying to conquer you. And you therefore had to conquer them. If you didn't, they would conquer you. So in a world where you had to conquer or be conquered, a little like the business capitalist world we live in today, where nations had to conquer each other and form alliances for their own safety, this context affected the paradigm with which certain scholars interpreted what interfaith relations should be. Other scholars, however, who could see an abode of peace, a Darul Sulh, as we see in the Sunnah of the Prophet, making peace treaties with Jews and Christians and idol worshippers, such as the one during the peace treaty of Hudaybiyah, where Muslims and idol worshippers who had hostility in the past agreed to live with peace, agreed to respect their mutual laws. In such contexts, we find those scholars differing with others in the way they interpret certain verses of the Quran when it comes to interfaith relations. And at the same time, we find for those living in a different reality, as we live in today, where sometimes a Muslim is actually safer in a non-Muslim country than in a Muslim country, that you are even freer to practice your religion, to voice your opinions and disagreement with certain scholars. Sometimes in some Muslim countries, this is not possible, and many countries have actually been very oppressive to freedom of thought and freedom for Muslim scholars to differ with others and debate issues in an open way. And so it is up to scholars of today to look at the new geopolitical reality, to assess past definitions and decide which of those past definitions are relevant, which of those past definitions are obsolete and do not apply to reality but may apply to future realities, and look at what is the best way of assessing the world to reflect the present diversity and to be fair to the Quran, to the Sunnah, and the eternal relevance of the message of Islam for greater peaceful coexistence. When we find the kind of alliances that have been built within the United Nations, within various forms of alliances in Asia, the African Union, in other parts of the world, between various countries to ensure greater security, greater economic and political stability, these are all in the tradition of forging alliances that will ensure people have the opportunity and the enabling environment to be more God-conscious, to pursue justice, the better good of all, both Muslims and non-Muslims, and to have greater justice and peaceful coexistence. So the traditional classification of the world into Darul Harb or Darul Kufr, Darul Islam, Darul Ahad, Darul Sulh, this and that classification, these are based on the realities in which scholars lived at their times, and it is for contemporary scholars to look at present realities and decide within what we face today, what may be a more appropriate, more befitting, and more useful way of dividing the world to be more conducive for the attainment of the objectives of peaceful coexistence and the common good of all. And Allah knows best.